even said, look, doctor, didn't you ask Venezuela for warships to help we in this empty mutiny? From Barrow we get rum, from Manly aluminum, Burnham feeding we with rice, yet you calling him a blind mice. Eric say, let Burnham keep he rice, I've got oil, they will have to pay my price. Oil don't spoil, three of them come like three blind mice. Don't you know, I treat them like if they were my wife. I give them money like peas by Christ, but it's my own throat they're trying to slice. Them three blind mice. So true. Goodbye.
This is Caribbean.
Them three mice do not know is I have them on the toe. Food for them to be fed. Without me all of them dead. Is my people have to toil to give them pitch and oil. Yet they back in Venezuela and don't want my land to smelter. Eric say they value my money as dirt, but I've got oil. 80 cents they say it is worth, but oil don't spoil. They remind me of them three blind mice. Don't you know, Manly, Burnham, Barrow? They go beg me again for what I have, but this time I'm going to make them starve. To get my dollars, they best think twice. Them three blind mice. If I lie, ask my leave. Both of us met Manly, traveling from St. Lucia. We met him in Grenada. I told him what the doc say. Manly blurt out right away. Tell Eric he has not died, for he has blind men at his side. Manly say, them three deputies that he have is the oil. Three spineless men of straw have him spoiled. Three of them come like three blind. Manly call Kamal Chambers error. Anything the doc say is right for them. The three of them are really yes men. Did you ever see such rat-tail men in your life as them three blind mice?
Yes, indeed, of course, a pleasant good night to all and sundry, East, West, North, South, Central, or Friends in Tobago, and wherever you are, streaming on the World Wide Web. A pleasant good day to you. Well, of course, you would have seen that camera a bit whitish, literally. Last night, of course, I had to be behind the scenes. I thought, of course, that tonight I will try my endeavor to be in front of the screen. And at the same time, of course, use all the gears at my disposal. I want to say the line is open immediately because we have some serious matters that we have to discuss. The whole question of the Trump administration calling off negotiations with the Venezuelans, which marks clearly another stage in this escalating conflict. And I'm saying conflict here, not that uh, a gun has been fired against, of course, each other, United States and that of the of of Venezuela, but it may well mean another stage in the escalating crisis between, of course, the United States of America and that of Venezuela. Of course, I have taken note, and we should take note of the fact that the Colombians are very annoyed. And in fact, I think I know that when the president of Colombia was in the United States and he was addressing, I think, what I consider to be diaspora in the United States, talking about Colombian diaspora, he did call for the National Guard in the United States to ignore Trump's call to, of course, evacuate or to repatriate persons that the ICE, they have a ICE organization that is comprised of immigration officers and police and so on, as well as the National Guard, to address the whole question of illegal immigrants in the United States. And of course, they have been extremely successful in the Trump administration, that is, in, of course, preventing the southern borders from being as porous as it was before under the Biden administration. So much so that zero amount of persons are now attempting to enter the United States via that, what is, of course, clearly the Mexican-United States border. It is, of course, to the north, if you want to call it that, of Mexico, and therefore it will be the south of the United States. And of course, the Rio Grande, which is, of course, is the large river, Rio Grande River, large river, that has been used as the place from which or through which the persons wanting to enter the United States illegally by land will, of course, traverse at a tremendous risk, etc. So maybe to some extent, while people may be running from, or put another way, running to possible prosperity, and put another way, running from, of course, poverty, maybe yes, the criminal justice system in their own country, south of the border, which has been the argument of the Trump administration. The fact of the matter is that these people have been entering the United States illegally, and so, of course, the Trump administration has put out a very stern, fervent, and what I consider to be consistent plan to get rid of and to prohibit in the first place persons from entering the United States in that way. So there we have it. But the fact of the matter is that our concern here on the corridor transformation must be the developments right next to us, Venezuela, of course, and the United States military build up in the region, in the southern, of course, Caribbean, and indeed the position of our own Prime Minister on this development. And we have a duty and responsibility to assess what is happening. But before we go further, of course, a pleasant good night to all and sundry, East, West, North, South, Central, our friends in Tobago, and wherever you are, streaming on the World Wide Web. A pleasant good day to you. I want to say that Joshua will not be with us tonight. He had a hectic day today, and I went to his school to make certain that he does what he has to do. And what I'm getting now is good reports, at least better than what I was getting before, in that, of course, we have agreed that he will finish his work on time. As he said last time, he's a slow writer. So I wanted to see today to what extent he's a slow writer. Well, of course, his teacher did explain to me the extent to which, of course, what was common and very significant, and I think you two as parents must take note, is that she never said that he can't do his work, but he is slow. Can't do his, never said he can't do his work. And in fact, once I entered the classroom, which she asked me to visit at any time at my convenience, so I did take the opportunity today to do that. What he had just completed a particular exercise, and then she, in front of me, she said, "Well done, well done." So I don't know if he anticipated I was coming or what transpired there. But then when he came home afterwards, he then said, "Well, you know, Daddy, I finished all of my work today, etc., etc." I said, "You could have always done it." So to self-inflict, it have people like that, It have people like that who would, of course, project a certain image of themselves and manifest it. I remember, of course, this a story about a fella who whole day things wasn't going good for him. He would have gone to a store, and then when he returned with the item, he realized that it was broken, all mashed up, and that his day went along that line. But this particular day, he was driving through, of course, and the scene is through the coconut in the night. He alone, desolate, and he got a flat tire. But when he checked, he had a spare tire, but no jack. No jack. He had the wheel spanner as well, but no jack. No jack. So he saw a light in the distance and decided to try his hand to see whether or not the occupants of that house may have a jack, or indeed, of course, give him a call, because his phone, consistent with that day, had no power. The battery was dead. So he was in a terrible situation in the dark, in the coconut, as the story goes. And here it is, he had an awful day. So when he reached the house, he knocked on the door. Somebody came out, and this was his response, without saying anything else. As the person opened the door and said, "Well, good night," and so on and so on, he turned and said, spontaneously, almost automatically, "Man, keep your damn jack." and he turned it back and gone. Because he was convinced so much that the person there, consistent with the day that he would have had, wouldn't have it. So as he goes to the door, the person take their good time and open the door, and he just simply say, "Keep your damn jack," and he go on his way. Well, of course, the moral of the story is that some people think about themselves in such a way that they act what they are thinking. And that brings me, of course, to the whole question of the existentialists and those philosophers that looks at the human being as an incredible biological being. An incredible biological being. Why am I saying that? Well, of course, you must know. We have invented, of course, the aircraft, the rockets. We land on the moon. We have ships, or should I say, machinery that goes to the outer distance of our solar system. We know what the Earth is all about. We go to the deepest depth to find all kinds of things. In other words, I'm saying that as human beings we are very creative, inventive, etc. And therefore, again, the lesson is to those persons who are living in what I consider to be poverty situation. You may not be able to eat 3 square meals a day. Your job does not provide the kind of resources that would make you feel comforted and comfortable. And when you compare, of course, the situation of others, not necessarily in your neighborhood, but as you travel, Westmoreans, and other well-to-do communities, and you believe that you are missing something, obviously, and that you will never get there. I say to you that that is not so. The requirements to live a comfortable life according to your desire and your capability, because everybody knows what is required: food, shelter, clothing, entertainment. Food, shelter, clothing, entertainment. Once you have that, basically you are living a comfortable life, and of course with good friends, good acquaintances, and you have a healthy, of course, family relations. Or if you decide not to have a family, or if you decide to be a recluse, if you decide to live on your own, the fact of the matter is that those basic is required, but it has to be acquired through a particular mindset. And I told, of course, some students today whom I had an encounter with today, indicating that when you are at that age, I'm talking about youths that are about to, next year I believe they will be doing the CXC exam. So I'm talking about 15, 16-year-olds. And I said in no uncertain terms that in spite of the fact that you are in a poor community, in a depressed community, in what the police describe as a crime-ridden community, you do not have to gravitate to that. You do not have to live your entire adult life. Of course, you have no choice now because you were what? Born into this family. And I always tell them that it was very, well, it may not be as easy as that, but I think it is not unfeasible, or put another way, it is quite possible that you could have been born into a well-to-do family, but this is where you are. Of course, there are other factors that will make that impossible. For example, your ethnicity, your genes, genetic, and your family traits and all of that. But I think for philosophical and for motivational reasons, I would have used that term to say you could have been born into any family. But of course, if you are black skinned now, it means that it would have been impossible for you to be born in a white family, not so, or a Chinese family, as the case may be, especially if you have texture of hair like mine, and of course hue of skin like mine. Let's, as I said, the line is open. I'm just gonna have some discussion. Oh boy. All right, call back because I'm not hearing the functioning of the phone and all right, let me just make sure that the phone is up and on. Sorry about that caller. Let me just make sure. Because I have moved into emergency mode, so I have my secondary system up and running. Let's see if that is going to Let me just make sure that certain things that are here are up and running. Let me see, right? Green, right? Okay, you have that, and then you have what again? That's that. Let me go down here now. Speaker, right? Some. All right. Right. It should be all right now. It should be all right. So call again, caller, and let's see if we can get you in on the system rather than I having to put my handset at the mic. Oh boy, it's happening again. All right. I don't know what's happening here. Why is it not? Why is it not ringing? All right. Why is it not ringing? I don't know. Let me go here. It's all right, caller. Let me just see what is wrong with the. Oh boy, why am I doing? All right, I'll have to take it here. All right, a pleasant good night. Welcome.
A pleasant good night to you, Captain Lennox Smith. You're looking like one of them Caribbean airline pilot tonight. I know which country you're destined to.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you. I had to find a way to conquer the challenges.
Alright, but I ain't come to stay long. I just want to ask you, do you have a picture of your ex?
If what?
You can share with the public, or you have to go sometime to Saturday night. Policy house, you have my existing picture of policy house right now?
Repeat that. I didn't get it clear. Repeat it. I didn't get it clear.
Announcement?
Repeat. I didn't get it clear. Repeat.
Do you have a photograph of your ex? Do you have a photograph of your ex?
Of whom? A photograph of?
A photo of Manzi House right now. We can share with the public.
Of the White Hall? Of the White House?
Manzi House. Manzi House.
Or Banzai House? Oh, no. As it is now. No. I passed there last night, so I wouldn't have done justice to a picture, but I'm going to get it for you for tomorrow night. And to show the unfinished building. All right, okay. Yes. He wanted to get people, of course, a photograph of Balize House as it is now, as I saw it last night. But I didn't take a picture because I was passing a bit late. But now that he has mentioned it, I'm certainly going to put it there as part of my archive because it's important that people see that. And thank you very much, of course, for that idea as well. Mr. Diego Martin, you can call back. I will simply have to put the phone here. That's what I'll do. A pleasant good night. Welcome.
Good night. Are you using the landline?
Yeah.
Your WhatsApp not working.
Nah, it looking so. I just don't understand that. But when one thing working, the next thing is working. But say what? Go ahead. Yeah, and I see Andy had some challenges as well this morning. He was off air, in fact, for a little while.
Right.
Yeah, but that's how it is sometimes. Very good. But go ahead.
Right. Good morning to all the listeners. You know, I think this come with some kind of theory.
Yes.
So, I want people to, as I mentioned in an earlier program, I think called the night before, to listen to Gigi, how we has basically characterized the TTPS and some of the partisan officers who basically indicated alluded to stalling the investigation, the bed Thomas, the merit place.
Yeah.
I really serious this. I had engaged the DCP Benjamin, and his response to that is they call him doing not saying anything. Don't feel we're not investigating. But if I had heard Gigi comment first, then I'd have cornered him again. Because some of the things they are alluding to. And these policemen has to be removed. And I'm hoping that the current government will look at the Police Act again, revisit it, and do something that basically, for example, tribunals have readily available for errant police officers to be disciplined immediately. For example, two cases people probably not aware of it.
Right.
The travel agent with the 100 charges, and those charges, and she was freed. And one of the sergeants in the thing, he did an affidavit saying asking for it to be basically adjourned after 8 years. And you know what is it in his affidavit? The police are under some stringent requirements, and as such they could do the affidavit in time. After 10 years, the other one is where the lady stopped somewhere on the highway in Central to buy shadow belly, and the charger, and when it's time to appear in court, the corporal drop a sick leave on them, and all the other police brethren didn't turn up for the case, and the case was dropped.
Right.
And what will happen? Those people, if they have the right, or will sue the state, and me and you have to pay money again. Those are the things we have to fix the service, and I've always clamored for immediate removal of the Police Service Commission, because they have the very hand tied. Now the biggest development that they're saying which contractor the went and sees all the equipment. But you remember the friend of the Prime Minister, fellow from Tobago? Everybody want to know if he has any link to that, because KCR goes so he can't protect anybody. So they went up in the illegal quarry. It's 14 of them the thing. But my problem is, why was the PNF turning a blind eye to that?
That's right.
You understand? Because they wanted Rowley best friend to do the same thing too. Because I would hear the COP say it have 60 deep. So that has been going on for about 10 years. That whole illegal coin and the amount of $10 billion. These people in government,
Right.
and the penniless, they turn a blind eye and the facility did corruption like that. And people have to understand we have to move them. The other thing I want to draw people's attention to.
Go ahead.
Remember the sports issue with the directors? What came out of it? Even though I'm more than pleased, you have to basically carry out your fiduciary duties. And reading that case again, you know what I realized? You remember I had a fellow named Julian, and his first name is Ken? He went to the Privy Council, and the Privy Council ruled once it's taxpayers' money jumping up, it is not statute bad. The Malcolm Jones issue, you know who put it out?
Tell me.
The board. They say it's not the state, it's the board. So the board,
I hear you, yes.
the board has to answer the question now. If they do the due diligence and put it out, yes, so.
Right.
I guess showing corn for people that think about where we could go and put all of them under the bus.
Right.
Because mashup is to protect your partner.
That's right.
You understand your best friend down in ANV, and then you get frivolous thing from a Casey, a hungry Casey who wanted money under pressure, and the AR five line legal opinion.
Yeah. The same man that sometime afterwards to go after their political opponents, they indicted. Yes, set them up.
Pick him up.
Yeah.
So all that is something to revisit, and I hope them fellas understand that all those fellas, and I know the people behind those cases will have all the information, eh?
Yeah.
So if they match up Petrotic to bring all the information,
Yeah.
I'm sure the councils and them will have it. Just like the Eco business, we
Yeah.
want something to happen there too. People have caused this country to dive deeper into debt. Taxpayers had to fund 29 million to save the company. And look, I hear a fellow by the name of Dan Paul say, you want to know which 600 gone from the heritage and civilization.
Yes, yes. I heard that piece of madness, and he was totally oblivious to the fact that he was indicting the PNM, because I said it on the ground before this morning. But go ahead when you finish.
I think he's becoming senile. I tell him what, to go back into 2023
Yes,
when the management of the Heritage Stabilization Fund
that's right.
make such a mistake in managing the fund that they lose 900 million.
Yes,
And the thing went down that was, they just pass it over and say that the risk you take with investment.
yeah, and sometime afterwards say that the fund has reached back the same level that they met it in
Right, so
2015.
the board of that big, of that company losing 900 million,
Yeah.
was it in fact due diligence? They did or they didn't do anyone to make sure they made the right investment, or they took a big risk and they didn't understand what they was doing. They say eat little and live long, eh?
Right.
And when you bite and you're greedy, you could choke, and that is what happened with that 900 million.
Yes.
And you know who the fellow was that? That was a fellow by name Iwat. You understand?
Yeah.
Go on. Have a nice day.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Very interesting. Very interesting developments. Again, you have the tendency to have me divert from my original plan for the night, but it doesn't mean that I mustn't have a plan. And of course, my plan was obviously to talk about the escalating situation in the Caribbean, in Southern Caribbean here, between, of course, Venezuela and the United States. And, of course, the Trump administration saying they cut off all diplomatic, all talk, viva vu, all talk with, of course, the Venezuelans. And I was looking at soliciting, of course, information as to where Trinidad and Tobago stands in all of this. There has been talk about, of course, the rescinding of the OFAC license, and Trinidad and Tobago may well have a window of opportunity to look at that again. Of course, the opposition's commentary, I think, is irrelevant. I think is osseous, and I think they have lost any credibility. So therefore, we ought not to even consider what they have to say. Taking credit for something, as we examined last night, is illusionary, it is superfluous, it's superficial, and self-serving as far as Cho Chong is concerned. So I have dismissed that, and I'm sure that when you look back at last night's program, you will understand why I'm saying that tonight. I give you an encouragement to look at last night's program, and whilst you are looking at tonight's, or you would, of course, look at it tonight at your own convenience after, of course, 9:30, when we would have concluded. But let's look at some of the things that the last caller has shared with us. You will see, of course, a video in the background. There is an audio with it, but I seem not to be able to get any audio, so I could just show you the images. But of course, all of that was part of my plan tonight, to talk about the reversal of, or should I say, the decision by the Trump administration for any further talks with the Venezuelans. Of course, there is an opinion in the United States and elsewhere that that is the last straw for the preparation for armed conflict and for putting troops on the ground in Venezuela by the Americans. So we wait and see. But once again, the concern that all of us must have as Trinbagonians is the role of Trinidad and Tobago in all of this. Of course, the administration has remained silent. I don't think it should be a running narrative, and I agree that it should be strategic. in terms of their response to these developments, because let's face it, whether we like it or not, once there is a armed conflict, uh, Trinidad and Tobago will be brought into it, as well as Guyana, and I understand there is some discussions with the Grenadian administration there as well. Of course, all that, the last, let's say, two-thirds of what I've just said would be, of course, speculative and second-guessing what the administration intends to do. Of course, ostensibly, they are engaged, of course, in a war of eradicating drug cartels from Latin America, from this side, where, of course, where the Caribbean Sea and the Atlantic Ocean touches, of course, some of those places where the drugs are supposed to be coming from. And of course, the blowing up of at least five vessels directly, of course, demonstrates that there is a seriousness. Of course, the Colombian, as you saw, the Colombian president is very upset with, of course, and is not, and will not be participating, according to him, in any, of course, efforts to invade Venezuela. So we know that that is not someone that the Americans could rely on to assist them, even though, of course, they have a western border with, of course, Venezuela. That being as it may, the fact of the matter is that these are developments that we must focus upon, we must frontally address, and to establish, whether by projection or whether by practicality, make our analysis in spite of this well, I shouldn't say deafening, but silence of the government, because we have a duty and responsibility to prepare for such an eventuality. All right, and therefore the government may be constrained to speak, but we have to apply our common sense and to say, well, if conflict is imminent, then what we should do in such circumstances. So that is part and parcel of the information that is being disclosed on the corridor transformation along that line. But let me get back, of course, to the existential topic that has grappled the nation, because as I said last night and on the ground report this morning, that the DPP really, whether advertently or inadvertently, has opened up a Pandora's box, because clearly the intention at the time, around the 7th of April this year, to pursue in the courts David Lee and, of course, his co-accused, choosing section 23(5) of the Indictable Offences Preliminary Inquiry Act, chapter 1201, is significant, because you see, that course of action provided the DPP with the option that I consider to be one that is extremely and intended to be humiliating, intended to have optimum embarrassment. Let me repeat, it was intended to have optimum embarrassment, when if you were genuinely concerned that there might have been a miscarriage of justice by the sitting presiding officer, the magistrate, accepting the no-case submission of the lawyers of Lee and his co-defendant, there was the option of an ordinary appeal within a certain amount of time. But the fact that you said that you are going to pursue section 23(5) of the Indictable Offences Preliminary Inquiry Act, chapter 1201, which gives the DPP the authority to, yes, say that I disagree with the magistrate and her conclusion that there is no case to answer, that the evidence did not meet the threshold required for fraud and or misbehavior in public office. The option taken provides for not just to take the evidence and the decision of the magistrate to a judge, but it also, if the judge agrees with the conclusion of the DPP, that is to say, disagreeing with the outcome or the decision of the magistrate in the lower court where the matter was first tried, you have to issue warrants for the arrest. Let me repeat, warrants for the arrest of, clearly the judge will not, by that action, once they agree, and in fact the judge agreed, then both defendants or former defendants having been set free by the magistrate court on the, and I'm coming to the time frame, coming to the time frame, having been set free, a warrant must be issued for their arrest, and then of course they will apply in the normal way thereafter for bail, and a trial will ensue. A trial will ensue on the matters that were before the magistrate. They can't change it, they can't add anything. I'm hearing people saying that they could add. It will be a travesty if that section of the law and an option open to the DPP, and the DPP did in fact take that option, that you could have the additional disadvantage to the defendant in that they could simply add more. No. Has to be what was before the magistrate that determined that, and if the DPP disagrees, he goes, of course, and use that section that I mentioned earlier. Section 23(5) of the Indictable Offences Preliminary Inquiries Act, Chapter 1201, to use that, but the significance of it, I am arguing, is the fact that once the judge agrees, the matter having been taken to him or her by the DPP, he or she, once agrees, issues a warrant for the arrest. And of course, they become, of course, either fugitives or they become defendants once again. It's very important. And I am making the case very slowly tonight so people understand, and you will determine whether or not there was an ulterior motive having regard to all of the circumstance. So let's get to the date. The day on which the decision was made was just after, if not on the date, for nominations, when Lee would have put in his nominations papers for election. I'm talking about the 7th of April. 7th of April, decision was made. Lee just had his nominations paper filed and of course accepted as the candidate for the UNC coalition of interests offering in Caroni Central, as the candidate for Caroni Central for that, for our, yes, for our, look at here, where is it, look at here, yes, for our, yes, that's right, for our arrangement, coalition of interests, of course, led by the UNC and headed by, of course, the present Prime Minister Kamala Prasad Bisesa. Very important. On the 7th of April, that occurred. The DPP immediately signaled that he will be using that measure to go back to court. Using that measure to go back to court. In a situation where campaign has already started, nominations have already been submitted and accepted, and here it is. Here it is. He chose to go that route. I'm saying choosing to go that route because the other option would have been, after I think 7 days or so of the ruling, as anybody else, you file an appeal on the subject if you felt that you were aggrieved. Just it applies to the defendant as it applies to the prosecution. Both sides could appeal any matter that they figure that there was some miscarriage of justice, or that everything wasn't ventilated, even though of course you may have difficulty in administering new evidence. But the fact is that you could talk about the error of the magistrate. They failed to look at this piece of evidence as opposed to the etc., etc. A number of different scenarios could be the basis for the appeal. But it would not have meant that there would have been an immediate arrest for Lee and his co-defendant if the DPP had taken the normal appeal route. So in all of this circumstance, having regard to the time, the political fever that was of course pitching of course and extremely high, PNM in problems, PNM in serious problems. You had of course the corridor transformation, the ground report, of course the Observer, and number of other platforms giving competition to the traditional media, who are trying of course to gaslight us and to hoodwink us and to tell us that listen, the perniciousness and the evil and the diabolical nature of the PNM is the best thing since sliced bread, and that we must accept of course mediocrity, and of course our destiny lies with of course that group of individuals who clearly not just have lost their way, but they have abused us. And here it is. The DPP took that approach. It was up to him to disagree with the magistrate. But clearly, one can build into the decision that he made, and making it in that way and choosing that approach, because he would have been disappointed that of course the charge itself would have been dismissed around that time, and must have felt that clearly. That's why he went to the next stage, because he felt that they had sufficient evidence to of course generate a conviction. So when the magistrate gave him the surprise of his life, he chose that approach. I am saying to you that you have to judge, you, the public, as to whether or not this approach was an agenda, because only one group could have benefited from that. The PNM. Only one. Let's not waste time. Certainly not the UNC or the coalition of interest. In fact, it would have done the opposite. It would have, if he had it, if the impact that was intended was realized, it would have of course dampened the prospects of the UNC coalition of interests. Yeah, what was the impact? So let us not waste time with anybody saying he's doing his job and all of the other platitudes that does not of course equate to common sense, logic, practicality, and common sense. It's common sense. So let us get that clear. So the decision of that process came 2 days ago, where of course Wise, the Minister now of Housing, Lee, was arrested with the other person who was co-arrested. Yeah. So it materialized. I have argued that having put that mechanism in place after the 7th of April, I am certain that the DPP, having regard to the fact that the PNM lost spectacularly the 2025 April 28 general elections, he would have been having second thoughts. But he cannot now go back to the judge. He cannot now go back to the judge and say, well, listen, I want to pursue that again. He must have, because things didn't work out. Things didn't work out how he expected, and set something in train that he could not have rescinded. He had no control of moving forward, and therefore the process manifested and ended, of course, in the way that it did, with the arrest of the sitting Minister of Housing and, of course, the other gentleman. But I often say on this program, the Lord moves in mysterious ways, his wonders to perform. Let me repeat. The Lord moves in mysterious ways, his wonders to perform, because there are two things that will now have of necessity to emerge and for the consideration of the present government. Only them could make the decision in that regard. And that is the DPP inadvertently, by accident, or deliberately. I don't know it is deliberate, because the population has no sympathy for the DPP, because they understand what was just said in their own way. But more significantly, the fact is that since that could have occurred and the intention was clear on the part of the DPP, then a Pandora's box was open, a can of worms was open. And it is for the present administration to take action whichever way they desire and how they desire, and by what strategy they will adopt in order to treat with the matter. And of course, the caller that spoke to this matter spoke about outstanding, what is called in police circles, cold cases. Whether they are before the DPP or whether they have been subjected to police investigation, interrogation, subject, of course, to the intervention of law enforcement across the board, is now a serious matter, and the public is not prepared to take any prisoners on this matter. That is what that incident did, you know. Because they understand what the intention was back on the 7th of April, when conveniently, because you see, at the same time when that was happening, another important matter of almost a similar nature involving vehicles came up. And that is Alwari selling one of his vehicles to someone And he did not adhere, he did not subscribe, he did not go through the process that is required for transferring of the vehicle that would have been sold. And he gave us some cock and bull story that he was out of the country and he left somebody there, but we could see no evidence that he wrote something. So that I would have expected that the investigating officers, whether it's the police commissioner or whosoever that was assigned to the matter, to make certain that, of course, all of the legal requirements was complied with. And clearly they weren't, because that came out. And as a result of that, he had to go now and make up, of course, the story that he left it with someone. He don't know where the letter is, and all of that. So the commissioner of police, in giving him a blind, had no evidence in front of him that could verify that Al-Rari gave somebody some letter. It was Al-Rari's word. There was no letter to say, well, look, this is a copy of the letter, as the case may be. And if he had it, well, don't be surprised, because they have this propensity to concoct Al-Rari, and don't tell me I know what I'm talking about, because, of course, the Vincent Nelson is the obvious matter that has to come up next. So you will understand why I say that they could concoct too bad and make up to protect themselves, and to, of course, indict others who they have targeted. That's not waste time. It's not waste time. So the parallel almost was existing at the time. But Al-Rari got a blind, but not David Lee. Not David Lee. And of course, whilst we accepted that the DPP has no investigative or powers, I'm sure, because of his relationship with the police and the dependency reciprocally, therefore, he could have easily picked up the phone and asked the commissioner a question and see whether, because I assume that that is the kind of relationship that they will have. Because if it is that on major matters, the police has to get the certification of the DPP to prefer charges. Then it is clear that that relationship cannot be such that there is no nexus in terms of the kind of administrative and cordial but respectful in both parties or both entities' interests, police service, or at the level of the commissioner of police and that of the DPP. One expects that is so. That is practical, and any what I consider to be neophytic student in administration will tell you that. There must be a relationship. There must be that nexus. Otherwise, what? The police do an investigation. They just send it to the DPP. The DPP say no or yes and send it back and dies about it. No, there must be cordial and regular interaction for those two entities pursuing or executing a particular function. That is to say, the criminal justice part, the initiating of criminal action, and the consideration of existing ones, whether to withdraw as the case may be. It is of necessity that they have a cordial relationship, a regular communication. So don't tell me that the DPP can't pick up the phone and tell and ask kindly of the Commissioner of Police to, of course, see what you could find with respect to this matter, because we are interested. Not just, of course, one that the police may have brought to him, and he is saying, well, listen, I want some more information. This does not, of course, meet the threshold that is required for me to take it to court, because I will look like a fool making that kind of recommendation, as we have seen on numerous occasions, as the the judiciary castigated, of course, the DPP for signing off on actions that would have been brought before the court, only to say that they ought not to have been, especially in circumstances where you have circumstantial evidence but no meat to, of course, facilitate a conviction or even to bring it to court. And the jurisprudence is saturated, it's pregnant with instances like that, and the DPP, I'm sure, would have known that and would have been conscious of that, because his reputation and his office integrity would have been at stake, and he had a duty to protect it. So let us not waste time and say that it's as strict as Rowley would say, a wall of China scenario. It's not so. Cannot be. Impossible. And don't let them fool you into believing when they make their assertions and their commentary. That is a convenient way. Why you think Alvary would say to Vincent Nelson that I will talk to the DPP? Because there is, of necessity, from time to time, communications. There must be. The DPP from time to time will want additional staffing, will want improved or additional physical accommodation. He or she who occupies that office must talk to the Attorney General, who is responsible for providing the wherewithal, and vice versa. The Attorney General must talk to the DPP. It don't matter how sour the relationship may be and how reluctant either party may wish to, of course, adjust, as we have seen with Lymore and the present DPP. And I'm sure that there will be more, especially coming out of that incident with David Lee. There'll be more animosity, if you want to call it that. But I expect that the professionalism will take precedent over the pettiness and the personal, maybe, antagonism that will naturally come out of this situation between, of course, the DPP's department and the Attorney General. And why am I bringing in the Attorney General at this point? Why am I? I'm bringing in the Attorney General at this point because a former Attorney General, Alvary, sought to abuse that relationship with the Vincent Nelson matter. And there is another situation with respect, of course, to the Attorney General current, I'm talking about John Jeremy, where the Anti-Corruption Bureau was transferred from the police to the Attorney General. Anti-corruption. And I want to say before, of course, I extrapolate further, while there will be anticipated fireworks, I like to call it, between the Attorney General current and that of the DPP, he a belly if he wants to stay there in that office, having regarded to the population want to eat him raw, because he did not act in the public's interests, but act more of a bias political operative, and some would say no different to a political financier. I don't want to say activist as yet. I don't want to say sycophant as yet. But there's, in some quarters, that is what is being said, and that, of course, makes it not only very troubling, but the DPP put himself in that position. And maybe one of the ways to extricate himself is to resign. It's to get out of it. Because it is too blatant, conspicuous, and obvious. I know that, of course, people are glued, riveted to their seats at this point in time, so nobody wants a call. But of course, I suppose as well. Let me give you credit as well. You understand the travails that I have with the phone tonight. But it gives me an opportunity, of course, to ventilate what I consider to be smoothly and consistently. Two, of course, 9:30. Yes, 9:30. Oh boy, we have just about two more minutes. Let me take off my glasses, boy. No. 2 more. What is that? 18 past. No. So we have plenty more time. I have enough time to finish. Yes. So what has happened with respect to moving forward? One is that a Pandora's box or a can of worms has been opened with the Lee matter. The present government has no choice but to rigorously and vehemently and aggressively pursue those so-called cold cases at the level of the police and therefore the Commissioner of Police. Demands will be made, I'm sure, and ought to. And of course, that of the DPP. And I don't want to elaborate as to the cases. Let me just take off this distraction in the back of me, because I want to make certain that we have the opportunity to absorb as much as we can in this very complex web of deception, political intrigue, biasness, abuse of office, and convenience, pretending that one is executing their duty. There's something called malfeasance, and there's something called misfeasance. Let me repeat. There's something called malfeasance and misfeasance. Malfeasance is when someone does an act that is clearly illegal, in your face, obvious. They could not get away from it. There is no skepticism. But misfeasance is a situation where a person who has the right, titular, leger, pragmatic, and otherwise, to conduct him or herself in a particular office, but does so either illegally or with some kind of malicious intent. Misfeasance. So you have the authority. You see that almost every day with Rowley and they have the authority. So what they do? I am Attorney General, of course, for example, Limo, or indeed, of course, his predecessor. But let's deal with Limo. So he goes and he comes to us and says, well, listen, the Privy Council didn't say that we acted anti-constitutional when the Privy Council said that local government election must be instituted immediately and should have been 3 months ago, save for the illegal intervention by the Rowley administration in going to the court, in going to the parliament with its slim majority. That in itself is an indictment. That itself shows anti-democratic propensity, and postpone the local government elections that effectively said that the cabinet take over our role as the electors, our right to vote who we want as councillors in the respective 14 municipal and regional corporations across the country. Of Trinidad, of course. Nothing to do with Tobago. He went there, he came there in our faces and tried to gaslight us. And Rowley, of course, in the parliament doing the same thing. When in fact, the fact that we did not have an election and the fact that it was postponed and that the Privy Council said, man, look, get on with it. The election should have been 3 months ago. And then, of course, at the same time, saying that they never infringe our constitutional right to vote in the way that the Privy Council expressed its disgust. He then turned and said, Rowley, that elections will be so and so and so, having, of course, reluctantly to concede to the instructions of the Privy Council. Concede to the instructions of the Privy Council. That's what he had to do. But will make you believe that somehow he did nothing wrong in the process by being braggadocious and playing smart with foolishness, and of course using semantics and hyperboles to make it look as though it was no big thing. Yes, it was. Yes, it was. Of the entire government of the day, and the consequent individual statements by both the Attorney General and that of the Prime Minister, then, Rowley. They tell him about insulting our intelligence up and down the place, and they have the audacity and the temerity to come in our faces and pretend as though self-righteous indignation is something you could pick up on the ground like stone and then, of course, apply it to your circumstance. And when they get the opportunity, they act as despots and, of course, autocrats and dictators. We must resist. We must say no to that kind of what I consider to be undermining of our democracy. And as I said yesterday, eternal vigilance is the hallmark of a very functional and working democracy. And as, of course, Reagan would have said, every successive generation have a duty to make sure that that eternal vigilance is not only subscribed to, but remains uppermost. Otherwise, we end up like Germany under Hitler. Most of you know the history. Mussolini, Gaddafi, you know, Saddam Hussein, Iraq. You know, it's not waste time. It's not waste time. That is what we averted by voting overwhelmingly for the UNC and the coalition of interest on the 28th of April. Quite apart, of course, from these draconian measures today that they believe that is somehow a panacea, whether it be property tax or whether it be the Trinidad and Tobago Revenue Authority that they created, never functioned, but suddenly somehow, see what's the guy, Dan Paul, what's his name, Senator, the PNM, suddenly saying that somehow that was implemented and the monies from that could have gone to, of course, address of course, our fiscal deficit and dysfunctionality which they introduced, the PNM introduced under his Dan Paul watch, a former permanent second the Ministry of Finance under the PNM, and clearly was an agent of the PNM inside of the government at the time. Because I'm sure that he transcended several administrations by being a permanent secretary or on his way to becoming a permanent secretary. And I want to say too, if I get back, of course, to the obligations of the present administration to pursue that Pandora's box, that kind of worms that was opened up by the decision to arrest under the circumstances, the antecedent that led to the recharging, re-indicting of David Lee. I want to tell you, let's not waste time in understanding what is at stake here. So here we have it, that the former Attorney General, the second one now, but was the first, of course, I talk about Al-Rari, engaged in conduct. The Vincent Nelson, of course, is the classic case, irrefutably so. Nobody could say otherwise. It's a classic case. It's the epitome of that abuse, that misfeasance in public office. It is converted into real legality or legal term by being called misbehavior in public office. Misbehavior in public office, contrary, of course, to the Integrity in Public Life Act. Let's not waste time. And therefore, the nexus, the fact that he could say to Vincent Nelson, which of course is public information, that I will talk to the DPP to see if he will not go harsh on you. But in case in case something happens, or put another way, if you do what we agree to, well, in a couple of months' time, you could sacrifice all your career and all the things that you learned as a senior counsel from England, of all places. So that is, you wanted better than that, a career like that. If you're prepared to sacrifice your career, I will talk with the DPP not to pursue any other action against you if other people do so because you call the name. That's one. And two, we'll put the mercy committee in place to absolve you of your criminal conduct. And in exchange for that, let me tell you how dangerous the PNM is. In exchange for that, we'll give you the $10 million that you earned under the previous UNC administration. Whether they get it, of course, illicitly or questionably, that has to be still ventilated and ought to have been. I have no difficulty with that. I have no horse in the race. But the fact is that they did not allow it to happen. What they did, they used it as a dangling enticement. You ever say? They use it as a dangling enticement for Vincent Nelson to give a statement against Anand Ramlogan and Ramdeen to secure a big fish conviction. That's what has happened there. To secure a big fish conviction. That is what Rowley and Al-Rari and the entire cabinet of the day did to secure big. Why? Because they want unmeritoriously to stay in government by engaging, of course, as I said, in misfeasance behavior, which, as I say, tantamount to corruption, tantamount to misbehavior in public office, according to the relevant law. That's what they did. Such waste time. But I want to point out to you, those Trinbagonians with a conscience and a aversion for despicable, dishonest, wicked, malicious, nefarious, and totally luciferious or diabolical conduct, abuse of office by the PNM under Rowley, Al-Rari, and the entire cabinet, which comprised, of course, the present then opposition leader Penelope Beckles. Let her say that she didn't know. Let her say she didn't know. What is that despicable figure that most people may not be aware of that needs it for them to understand and therefore become emotional about this entire affair? Emotional. And while, of course, emotions sometimes trump logic and common sense, I think emotions is well placed in this particular circumstance because it is absolutely unacceptable and despicable that human beings could, of course, against their own fellow men because they want to stay in power and they want to abuse their office and they wanted to get more than their fair share, as we have seen. That level of avarice and greed must be terminated. What was that? Al-Rari and they was prepared to exploit Vincent Nelson's ailment. He thought that he had cancer that was terminal, and he had to go and seek medical attention outside of Trinidad and to begin to travel to the UK to his doctors. And Al-Rari and they extracted a statement from him. Extracted a statement from him. We will continue after this call. A pleasant good night. Welcome to the corridor.
Yeah, good night, Mr. Lennox, and good night to everybody on the line. Good night to John today. Mr. Lennox, listen, I want to find out something.
Go ahead.
The FATCA license,
Yeah.
right? No, I saw today on Facebook, right? The Honorable Attorney General, what's his name again? Mr. Jeremy, right? He talk about the FATCA license and so forth, and he gives some interesting figures because I mean Stuart Young and them and that former evil government paid some kind of $120 million, right? For in during the process and everything, and Kamala and them now when they considering that same drug and gas deal, and them only pay $500,000. How you explain that, Max?
Repeat that for me. What you heard, because it is repeated information. Well, go ahead.
John Jeremy, right?
Mm-hmm.
He said to the public, right, that the drug and gas,
Yes.
Trinidad and Tobago paid $120 million.
I wanted to get
right?
that information bad, you see, and I told
Right?
people that will come out.
$120 million.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
But but when Kamala and them get the FATCA license, right, for the same dragon deal, all them only pay was just $500,000, 500,000.
Oh, I see.
how
So
you
there is
looking at
some
that, Max?
financial transaction associated with the announcement that was made by the Americans to rescind or reinstate. That what you're saying? With Kamala and they?
Yeah.
All right,
So
okay.
I tried to figure out-
I'm talking so because
I
I'm not
tried to
aware,
figure
so I appreciate that. Yeah. All right. Well, I'm going to
Yeah.
comment on it.
I saw it on Facebook. I saw so we know.
But
something
are you
about
are you
that money
surprised?
that
Are you
Stuart
surprised?
and
Are you
them spend
surprised?
with Maduro and them.
Yeah, but are you surprised? Are you surprised as
No, I'm not
as
surprised.
someone who is
I think
aware?
that
Are you
people-
surprised?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, because I am not
I'm telling
surprised.
you why not surprised.
Yeah, we saw where
See, when
Rowley
they
said
deal
that
with
the
corrupt dealings,
that the PNM was bankrupt
anything is
and they
possible.
end up billing something for over $100 million. Totally bankrupt, owing
Yeah.
$5 million. Huh? And yet still, of course, we saw where
You
they
telling me?
they train one $400 million was spent and we can't know where it gone. Right? And then
Boy,
so
I
many.
don't know, boy.
Yeah. That
That's a
is,
serious thing,
and
though.
and
Yeah,
that's
but
just the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We hear about it. I go on.
Yes.
Okay,
Thank you very
man.
much, of course, for that information. What he has said, people, of course, I want to interject that into the conversation. I know that I'm on a roll and you don't want me to pause too much, but I think every caller needs, a hearing, one, and two, of course, to if I need to comment, I think I have the obligation so to do. But he just said that the cost of the OFAC, he said factor, but it's OFAC license, the Office of Foreign Assets in the United States. That is what it is called, the OFAC license. Um, the it appears that some money would have had to be passed, and of course, it's minuscule, infinitesimally smaller than what than what the Rowley administration paid. And I was asking him whether or not he's surprised, and nobody should be. Rowley said that there was no cost for Delcy Rodriguez coming here, and suddenly, of course, a shipment of gasoline that was carded for way or was slated for Aruba or somewhere there ended up in Venezuela. No surprise. And the fact that, of course, Delcy was prepared to come here to talk about it. We don't know what came on that plane, because it was entirely, of course, the domain and the responsibility of the government. And we know that is a conspirators. We know that is a conspirators, evil, self-serving, avarice, money mongering, meaning that grabbing for themselves government. And let us not waste time with that. When we saw, of course, the entire cabinet making a decision to close down Petrotrain, you should know that there's something in the pipeline more than the, or should I say in the mortar more than the pestle. Or I don't want to use pipeline here because it may bring back, of course, emotional memories of those persons who were trapped and left to dead or to die. And of course, that very, very unfortunate barrier tragedy. But the fact is that we have seen patterns of behavior of that nature. We don't know, for example, what was paid for vaccines. We don't know. Was always some kind of what? Built-in arrangement for secrecy. Secrecy, yes. Non-disclosure clauses. That's what they use and say it is normal. Normal for every damn thing, because they would have spent more than they were prepared to tell us. They couldn't even account, couldn't even reach, in the case of Imbert at least, I think he reached just above $1 billion. But Rowley couldn't even meet $1 billion when we were asking him to account for the over $22 billion that was spent, occasioned by the presence of the COVID virus in this country. And then claiming, of course, you have a parallel system that is internationally acclaimed only by them. Internationally acclaimed, but only by them locally, by their cabinet. And then, of course, we found out that over 5,000 people died. 5,000 people died. And not only that, they also instituted a state of emergency. And the only reason why it was preempted was largely because the virility, the toxicity of the virus was reduced. Otherwise, public servants would have paid extremely high price, in particular because they were being told that they must, if they want a paycheck at all, whether you're a union worker or not, you must not forget the P&M and that kind of hogwash. You know how much of you would have been out of a job if they had gotten their way. You know how much of you would have been out of a job. If we are talking numbers here, if we are talking numbers, I'm not talking, in other words, I'm talking distinct from, of course, the sympathy that one should have for the CPEP workers and that of the URP and that of the genuine ones. And I feel your pain and I understand. But for you to get more, not necessarily you, it may be your successive generations, or indeed those who would come on to the system, because every single year we have over 14,000 young people leaving the secondary school, the majority of which would be, of course, seeking work, and in particular they have to eat, drink and sleep, etc., and want to wear nice things, that they will want to gravitate for these temporary worker scenarios that was designed to address those kinds of problems. Why still look for something more permanent and substantive? Understand that. Thought it was important, of course, to therefore associate myself and therefore the discussion initiated by the last caller. So I'm not surprised about and you ought not to be, about the mammoth expenditure, comparatively speaking, because they had their narrative right through. Look, the UNC spend this. We saw it, of course, with the QREP exchange, for example. And of course, I think it was 800 million, and they said they reduced it to 400 million. What they didn't tell us is that the quality and the architecture and the fact that UDCAT, being the supervising government agency, they are able at will to cut their share of it, so to make it appear as if they did it cheaper. But you know, they're totally silent on the cost of that piece of the highway that was given to Jusamco, who was pouring concrete on the foundation of Balize House. Because somebody asked about Balize House. They didn't tell us anything about that, silent about that. And that piece of the highway fell promptly into the swamp below. Into the swamp below. But let's get back, of course, to conclude the whole question of the Vincent Nelson matter. And I was making the point because it has to do with humanity, it has to do with humaneness, and it has to do with the adroit and the evil that is the PNM. Sympathy and empathy on the ordinary Joe, but they see it as par for the course to plunge people into all kinds of hardship and tell you that that is the best thing you deserve. You bring on property tax, you bring on, of course, online tax, not online, but you know what I'm talking about, those people who would purchase things online and send it back. There's a term for it. All of that, the potential to increase electricity, water rates, and at the same time have no qualms in increasing their own salary at 47% in the case of the Prime Minister, and it's no big thing. And he could isolate, he can, what I like to call, compartmentalize, and therefore talk in a silo that he deserves it, or the office of the Prime Minister deserves it, for whosoever is there, etc. Arguments of convenience to fleece and to heartlessly and with a high degree of profligacy, waste and mismanagement to deprive us taxpayers, citizens, of the benefits that these resources were supposed to provide us by way of their availability or greater availability, but for the consumption of same unmeritoriously by members of the PNM government under Rowley and Stuart Young. That's not waste time. But let me get back, of course, to that very sad, very ugly reason why Vincent Nelson felt compelled to do what was asked of him by Rowley and Al-Rari, being, of course, the point man, the man in direct contact with Vincent Nelson. The man had a cancer problem. The man wanted to go to the UK to get at least a checkup, diagnosis and treatment if necessary. he needed the $10 million that was owing to him. The court agreed. He went to court and he got it. But Al-Rawi and them appealed and tell him that they will continue to appeal. They don't care if he dead. That's the point I'm making. You know what I say? I said they didn't care if he died. So long as they got to their nefarious way of attempting, of course, to get two UNC big fish, Anal Ram Logan and Ramdi. You telling me that all they have any kind of consideration for these evil, diabolical, Luciferan, and of course clearly angelic night and obnoxious and barbaric individuals in modern Trinidad and Tobago? And I could say without fear of contradiction, if it was a UNC government, not only would they have not engaged in that kind of what I consider to be not just misbehavior in public office, but the perversion of the criminal justice system. That is part of the Pandora's box that was opened up by the decision recently and the quagmire that David Lee found himself in, initiated by the DPP, Gaspard. Yeah, that's what. Yes, people. So here we have it. The man had a serious medical problem concerning himself with begging for his already earned $10 billion. The $10 million. The $10 million was not as a consequence of any bribe for him to sign that thing, you know. No, it was money already earned. Whether the PNM like it or not, they went to court. The court said that he earned it, and therefore it should be given to him. Al-Rawi and them threatened the man to take the thing to the appeal court, to the Privy Council if necessary, and all of that was weighing clearly on a man's mind who, of course, is facing death because of an incurable ailment called cancer. Yes, people, that is what transpired. So they held him to ransom for his own money. And when he provided, of course, the statement that they wanted, and of course he asking for certain conditionalities as well. Of course, he's a lawyer, he must do that of necessity and of common sense, because an ordinary person will want certain guarantees as well, which would have included, of course, as I said, Al-Rawi claiming that he has control of the DPP, and of course the Mercy Committee will be initiated, etc. And while that was happening, of course, and when he got his way, you saw him up and down in the social and, of course, traditional media saying, well, listen, first of its kind, I have been able to secure, because of the legislation that was passed, an arrangement for the first time where Vincent Nelson will be going before the court in, of course, the first case of a serious nature, plea bargaining. All of that he did. Rowley was in his glee. And the man suffered from cancer, and they forced him to sign that document for him to get his 10 million. He eventually got his 10 million, but as fate will have it, the cancer has receded. And he was able to come back to Trinidad and make certain additional disclosures that must be the subject of investigation by this government. Put another way, one of the items, quite apart from, of course, Rowley's claimed intervention in trying to prevent the former Commissioner of Police, Gary Griffith, from being part of that shortlist that was sent to the President and was supposed to be forwarded to the Parliament. Instead, it was reversed. And of course, Bliss C. Prasad, the chairman of the Police Service Commission, was found guilty, and as such, everybody else had to resign. The entire Police Service Commission resigned over that. Rowley instituted that. And in the beginning, he said he didn't know misfeasance. He didn't know. But the Prime Minister has every right to talk to anybody. And so that's what he was saying. Until, and I want to commend, you cannot help but admire Kamala Prasad Bissessa, not only of her tenaciousness, not only of her acute mind, not only of her sagacious and strategic disposition, but she is an existential intellect. Unprecedented, because we had nothing like her before, and we will have nothing like her in the future, even though Rowley was claiming to be some kind of pseudo-intellect. He's a damn ass. That is what he turned out to be. And if you want to use intellectual, well, you could describe the kind of intellectual he is. A whole ass intellectual. Or, if you want to describe what kind of ass he is, an intellectual ass. Let's not waste time. Why am I saying and admiring Kamala Prasad Bissessa for all of those very, what I consider virtuous qualities? You see, armed with the information, of course, whistleblowers would have, across the system, would have aided the opposition leader then. She caused and initiated for the first time in Trinidad and Tobago the potential for impeachment of a sitting president, a president that only has ceremonial value, but here it is, because she had responsibility to pass the documentation that was sent from the original, of course, Police Service Commission for the appointment or for the selection by the Parliament, ultimately, of a commissioner of police. She sent it back rather than sending it forward. And so Kamala Prasad Bissessa, with of course a 19 member opposition, was able to utilize the constitution and said, listen, we want to hear from the president, and therefore caused to convene a plenary session of both our bicameral parliament, meaning that both Senate and the lower house would have met on the matter. But of course, we saw where the speaker, who was supposed to be the presiding officer, and he said George, frustrate the entire process. But mission accomplished, that's the point. That she was able to initiate a process where for the first time in the history, and the victim here, I should say, the victim here, because she was a victim of Rowley's shenanigans, his immoral conduct, his illegality, and his abuse of office, high-handedness, egotistic disposition, and megalomaniac being, evil and wicked, dangerous, and turned out to be the existential threat to our democracy in Trinidad and Tobago. Thank God he pretended that he was ridding himself, but by leaving, of course, a nincompoop of a similar ilk, but the population rejected all. No more hoodwinking. No more hoodwinking. So people, she was able to cause that to happen, and that is when Rowley confessed. Because I'm sure, let's face it, in human circumstance, in your own circumstance, a fella set you up or a woman set you up. But it's a setup that will impugn your character. I had a situation like that today with a friend of mine that I'm going to maybe let me share it one time so you'll understand what I'm talking about. But would impugn your character. And so I'm sure that the former president, first lady in the presidency of the country, must have told Rowley, listen, get me out of this mess that you put me in, you know. And that is why, apart from, of course, the role of Anizette George, the presiding officer, Rowley had to come and say, well, yes, it was me. But I want to tell you something as well. That, and I'm making reference to my own experience, a colleague of mine, a female, we together had formed a company to deal with the collection and export of plastics, whether it be PET, meaning soft drink, or PET, meaning of course those that you have the other types of plastic, PET, and you have the other kinds of plastics. Right in over there in Lavington. And guess what? When the Pandey administration came into office, Movin Assam was the minister responsible for trade. So we invited him to see the operations, part of which was on Fernandez Compound, another part, of course, in Jumont Rise, and we had, of course, a factory further up Lady Young Road, not too far from Las Alturas. So he came and he saw. And then he told us that, listen, if you're taking rubbish and turning it into money by exporting it, there is people like you we would want on the Small Business Development Company. Yeah. Yeah, we started that. I started that right here in Trinidad. The others are Simcol and all of them. They are recent addendums. But we started that, and you see the time frame I'm talking about here, so you could check back. And he said that, well, you two, we would like to be on the Small Business Development Company, which of course he's putting together, and would want us to be on the board of the Small Business Development Company. Well, of course, it goes without saying. We just say thank you, and he left after his visit. But sometime later, I remember very distinctly, and I will call names. I don't call her name, but I'll call names in terms of who she wrote to. She wrote to, of course, Wade Mark. I think he had some position in the party at the time, indicating that Lennox Smith is at this and at that, and all kind of things that people would normally say when you are doing good. No different to what they say about Kamala Prasad, Mr. Pandey, and so on and so forth, and even Rowley. But in the case of Rowley, it is blasted truth. Because you can't say things about people that are true, and you can't say things about people that are not true. Anyhow. So, a very good colleague of mine got wind of the correspondence that was sent maligning me, suggesting that I'm unfit to be on the board of the SBDC. If Wayne Mark is listening, or somebody would invite him so to do, it's all right. I don't mind. Because for the first time, I'm making this public. I spent a lot of time during the campaign with him, he being, of course, the coordinator for the UNC on this side, and I never mentioned that. So I mention it now because of the circumstance and the concern that I have, and the and the fact that the present administration must now take the challenge of this Pandora's box that was opened up as a consequence of the incident with David Lee. They must not allow this situation to not reach its natural conclusion, and that is to put, of course, members of the former PNM administration, including Rowley and Stuart Young and others, in blue lights and silver bracelets. That's the point I'm making. But anyhow, so she writes. So he comes to me and say, well, listen, this girl write all this kind of thing about you and so on, boy. Boy, go and defend yourself. Write back and tell the man that it's not so and so on. I say, me? I say, me? No. I'm not doing that. I say that, and my argument was very simple. All of them know me. All of them know my reputation. All of them know my work in the Laventille area in terms of young people developing, of course, training programs and so on. Not one of them know her. And if she could come out of the blues and say things about me that would prevent them from giving me an appointment on the Small Business Development Board, then they must be questioned, not me. They must be questioned, not me. So when the fullness of the process would have been completed, Mr. Pandey was, of course, was at the BTAM that day, and then he, of course, had a final meeting at Sealux, and where it's called the Old Fish Market, which was converted to a community center. So I am on the balcony in the back, but very visible to the head table because they are at a lower level. So Mr. Pandey, then Prime Minister, glanced up and he saw me there. He said, hey, Mr. Smith, I ain't supposed to say this, but I'll say it. Tomorrow, the cabinet will be meeting, and we will be making you a director of the SBDC, the Small Business Development Company. What is the moral of the story? If you know the truth about a situation, and you are the victim of maligning, misinformation, disinformation, you are comfortable. Because eventually, that's the only impediment, that's the only difficulty, and that is, it will take a little time for all of that maligning to process and to go through its natural, what I consider to be convolution and meandering, before they say, nah, boy, that fella is not what they say he is, boy. Or that girl is not, or that woman is not what they say he or she is. But here it is. This woman sent a letter maligning me because she wants the opportunity to be on the board. And of course, there are others surrounding me, like today, have some concerns. And I say, well, let them talk. Let them talk. And let me tell you what transpired today. In brief, because we're finishing now. It's what now? What's the time now? Of course, it's 10 o'clock already. Wow. All right. Let me just, what transpired today? There is a sort of situation with the former candidate that we put up in Laventille East. And of course, we use the symbol of the UNC to manage that situation. And of course, there are some from the UNC, and I'm sure it's from the UNC, who of course believe that somehow they should get something, and therefore rely on him, and making him believe, or he gullible enough to forget that he was never a UNC candidate, that he could have never been a UNC candidate, because he would not have even been considered to contest that seat, because he simply had no connections. He was not a member, he's not a member, and the only Reason why he became the candidate is because of Love's the 11th outreach for vertical enrichment. This party found itself in the what? In the coalition of interests. But yet still somehow after post-election, somehow they believe that, and he believed that his loyalty now is to the UNC, and they therefore will engage in activities to sully that which caused him to be where he is today. And I just laughed. And I told him that, and I told the person who brought that to my attention what I just told you about my colleague when we were, of course, being considered for the SBDC post. It's obvious. Nobody know you. Nobody cared about you. And here it is, I did it. I brought you into the thing. And you want to, well, go ahead. Let's see what is going to happen there. It's the same because there's a process and there's a principle, there's a rule. You don't betray that which I said, but people that are good will always prevail. But of course, it takes some time to make it happen. I'm here now half an hour longer than normal. My own money, and of course with the assistance of some benefactors who I appreciate and will be, of course, noting privately and publicly as well. So people, once again, the Pandora's box has been opened. I expect, of course, the Attorney General, now that he has, of course, under his wings, the anti-corruption unit, to utilize that to make certain that Al-Rari and they shut their blasted mouth and understand that they cannot have the cake and eat it. You did evil to the people, and you cannot benefit in times when the situation has drastically, meteorically changed. I believe that somehow you can still benefit. Hello, little. Have a wonderful rest of the night. God bless, of course. I'll see you tomorrow morning on the ground report, of course. Andy, Mikey, and myself. Boy, like we had to get back to 10 o'clock, but I don't know how the hell. Anyhow, I slept earlier today, so probably that's why I am not feeling as drained as I normally would in previous. I think I better start doing that because I've had some energy, what I consider to be low levels these days that has prevented me from being as productive as I would like. So I think I better take some rest during the day and then of course continue in the night, and after this of course I will continue some work as well until of course I feel fatigue again. That being as it may, what we started with earlier, I think we started with a particular tune, but I think I could probably end with Bali, of course, Shaka Shaka. Of course, the more they try, it's more, of course, we will persevere and win. Once again, of course, the present government has an obligation having regard to the David Lee scenario. Can of worm has been opened, whether advertently or inadvertently, by the DPP in that move that he would have made, intended, of course, to sully or to reduce or to destroy the UNC. Electorally, I'm talking about, not literally, but the fact is that it has not worked, and therefore they should not be benefiting as they are attempting to show the population that somehow they did nothing wrong whilst they were there in the 9-point-something years prior to the 28th of April 2025, just about 6 months ago, when the election took place, and they were soundly beaten. I'm talking about the PNM, soundly beaten. Have a wonderful one. God bless. Bye-bye.
Shaka, shaka, talk to me. In a happy family. Tell me when you're hitting one. Better you hit all and done.